and are going to get slammed with more costs. This is all the CEOs. These are the guys that own the energy companies, that have the generators, that have the retailers, that are sending you your power bills, saying you're going to get slammed with higher costs.
G'day everyone, welcome to the Bothy. I'm Chris.
G'day, I'm Al.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, mate.
Yes, even though you won't see it for 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll be a couple of weeks behind, but happy St. Patrick's Day.
Some of us like the Irish drink and some of us not so
Not so keen. Yeah. Today, mate, it is our great pleasure to feature a speech from the widely recognised and seriously switched on Aidan Morrison. Aidan is the Director of Energy Research for the Centre of Independent Studies. He looks at the energy sector from a unique perspective. His job is to study the most viable means to transition to a low-carbon economy, incorporating full system analysis and modelling. So do we want to get to something like net zero? Yes. What is the most effective and cheapest way for the population to get there?
Without impoverishing the
people.
The people.
Exactly right.
So the way normal people would do it.
Correct.
Yeah.
What he has to say is more than compelling, mate. It's terrifying. So without further ado, here's Aidan's speech from the recent Across Victoria Alliance conference, and we'll come back for a chat at the end.
Great. Thanks so much, Gerald. Got a rugby mic, so I'll point back here now and again. It's an absolute pleasure to come out to audiences like this, to come to the country. It's been great that Gerald's invited me to his area a couple of times now, and I love coming to speak to the country because I feel like this is an audience that is deeply engaged with the issues of what's going on with renewable energy rollout. But my perspective that I bring to it is not yours. I'm actually here not as an advocate for the regions, but an advocate for the rest of the entire nation that depends on sensible energy policy for our future economic prosperity. And that's what my research has been all about. It's about the economics of energy, particularly the planned renewable energy transition. And what I've been trying to focus on and get people to understand, particularly get policymakers and politicians to understand, is the link between building a weather-dependent energy system and your power prices, the overall cost of electricity. Because at the moment, if you know for sure that renewable energy is what drives that higher power prices, and you know, obviously, when you have high power prices, people can't turn on their ACs. People can't get good jobs. We don't get flourishing industries with high power prices. The politics and the policies write themselves if that link is strong, if you are sure that what we're doing now is going to put upward pressure on power prices. But at the moment, it seems that policymakers and politicians aren't sure about that. It's an absolute toss-up at the moment whether building more renewable energy is the cause of the higher power prices, or we just need to get it a bit more right. And around the corner, it will push power prices down. So that's the focus of my talk today, to try to explain to you why we can be absolutely confident that a weather-dependent intermittent energy system is not consistent with low-cost, reliable electricity. That's my purpose to talk to you today. So firstly, Centre for Independent Studies, I should say, is a centre-right classical liberalism think tank, is a school of thought we espouse, so about free markets, free enterprise, free speech for the individual. But in this case, I'm absolutely shocked to see the degree of market interventions to push a higher cost energy system onto the rest of Australia. Now, a few years ago, there was a time back in 2019, 2020, before much of the renewable energy rollout had really started at the sort of pace we are now. It was popular to say things like this. It was popular to say, and you might be able to read the fine print, about $70 a megawatt hour. With all the extras, with all the firming, with all the transmission, with all the storage, with all the backups, about $70 a megawatt hour, which is $20 cheaper than the average price at the time. So it's cheaper than what we've got, and it's falling at costs about $10 a year. This is Tim Buckley from IEFA. He's still an advocate for renewable energy. Now, that was $70 back then, and we've since then been able to see how CSIRO's reports, and at the time, they did estimate, actually, about $70 a megawatt hour. The subsequent year they came out. But today, the chart on the left-hand side up here, it actually shows you, I wonder if it probably doesn't work. It actually shows you their latest estimates. Put the price not quite around double that. All right, we're talking about $150 a megawatt hour is their latest estimates, even the CSIRO. So things have changed, and yet the narrative absolutely has not. Now, my first piece of evidence is to spruik a paper that we've written at the Centre for Independent Studies. It's called the Renewable Energy Honeymoon. How starting is easy and everything else is hard after that, right? But this is an important dynamic because a little bit of wind and solar doesn't actually cause too much trouble for the grid. You can squeeze a little bit in and that's relatively easy. Doesn't necessarily add a lot of value, but doesn't cause much pain, all right? But this does not scale. Beyond a certain point, trying to get very high fractions of this weather-dependent energy causes chaos. Now, we did a chart here to show you a bit of a graph about all the different countries around the world and how they've gone. There are no exceptions. There is no one in the bottom right-hand side of that graph, okay? If ever you've heard someone say, oh, you know what, lots of renewables, Guatemala's done it, or Canada's done it, or how about Brazil? All hydro, right? Hydro you can switch on and off like a tap, which makes all the difference in the world to building a baseload power system. Not with wind and solar. There are simply no exceptions. No one around the world has done it. Now, I'm critiqued often, oh, that's just correlation, it's not causation, maybe there's other things going on, it's very complicated. So the second part of our paper is to propose a bit of a technical mechanism, right? And it's something like this. I won't go into the details, but basically, if you take 25% capacity factor solar and about 35% capacity factor wind, and you stack them together in the very best possible way, where the wind rises as soon as the sun sets, you still can't get more than 60% of a steady demand covered. So at around that point, and this is the best case, when the wind rises as soon as the sun sets and the sun rises and does the same thing every single day, in the best case, you get 60%, a realistic circumstance, more like 30 to 40%, all right, with some more real world factors taken into account, which is sort of where we are today. At that point, too much energy sometimes in places, still not enough at others, and you have to start moving energy around. All right, you've got too much at one time, move it to a different time using energy storage, that's batteries, pumped hydro, or move it to a different place far away using transmission. And this is where the extra costs in the system start to stack up. All right, and we can see, obviously, from all the evidence in Australia that we're hitting that point now. The renewable energy generation has stopped dead. There's no more private investment in that. Instead, the investment pushes towards transmission, and this is from the regulator, a huge wall of capex, all these multi-billion-dollar projects, all of which have to be built in the next 10 years, we're told. Good luck with that. We'll see how that does for inflation and demand on materials and labour, etc. And that is going to hit your bills. None of it's hit yet, by the way. This is what's coming. None of these major projects have yet hit your bills, all right? If you think the bills have gone up so far, it's nothing compared to what is coming next, all right? And also, moving energy around space, moving energy around in time is the storage. A good estimate, by the way, I'd give good regard to Bruce Mountain, estimated that the cost increases are going to put 50% on bills for the Victorian transmission plan, all right? The increase in the regulated asset base from just a few $1 billion to something like 28 billion, Bruce's estimate, that will drive up massive costs and something like double to triple the costs for industry, for whom transmission is a larger component. So absolutely crystal clear, right? We can draw these links now. And also batteries. Batteries are being invested in left, right and centre by governments that are securing the underwriting for them. Now, you have to look around to find the evidence, but the West Australian government produced an economic regulatory paper here, and they estimated the cost for their 6-hour batteries at about $500 million per gigawatt per year for the 15-year life cycle of a battery, all right? So in New South Wales, we're building 8 to 10-hour batteries, probably a little bit more than that. It turns out, in a rough bit of the maths from the New South Wales subsidy schemes, just the subsidy component, which is less than a quarter, to have that energy moved will cost about the same amount as the average cost of generating electricity overall. All right, so you simply cannot have a system where you've got to pay the average price for generation just for the moving around service something like 4 or 5 times over. That system will never get to be low cost. Now, everywhere around the world that's tried this has got further than us down the renewable energy transition. Global examples tell us it leads to huge economic pain. And this is a very famous letter. It should be famous. It probably has not been popularised the way it should in the Australian press. From all the leading giants of German industries, one of the biggest chemical and steel makers in the world, a major union as well, they wrote to the Chancellor and said, look, this is the worst economic crisis since World War II. If the energy transition is a open heart surgery, the patient is at risk of dying on the table, all right? So it doesn't come any clearer than this, all right? And they laying the blame firmly at the energy vendor over there in Germany. So it's absolutely well known what's happened there. The Chancellor now, current Chancellor, has said it was a huge strategic error to close down nuclear. So that experiment overseas is now done, all right? We can also see, for example, in the UK, who are still trying and still persisting, but early last year, they were introducing new subsidy schemes to protect their industry, and they are happy to make the link. They do actually tell you, right? You know, a number of policies have been developed to increase the share of electricity generation from renewable sources, right? And the government recognises that in the short to medium term, the resulting increase in electricity prices is not a secret. We're the only country that is still denying this link. This is a strange thing. Everywhere else has been tried, including Labor governments. They are willing to make that link now. Why can't governments here in Australia make the same link? Now, any prospect that things might get better in the long term has been absolutely dashed by this incredible parliamentary testimony, right? So the long-term hope of the renewable energy transition is that wholesale prices go down very, very low. Well, guess what? Here you have the CEOs of the major electricity companies in parliamentary testimony saying, guess what? We can have the wholesale cost go down to 50%, to halve, and we'll still have prices go up 20%. Separate executives, separate companies said, know what? You could have the wholesale prices go to zero and you don't get cheaper electricity, because they have pushed so much other costs into the subsidies, the transmission, other fixed costs, all right? So there is no light left at the end of the tunnel. It's been tried elsewhere. All the rest of the system moving around energy will push up prices absolutely massively. Now, we're just starting to see the first tip of the iceberg to be revealed in Australia, all right? And so in New South Wales is probably leading the pack with the renewable energy zones being rolled out. We had a politician there called Matt Keane. He was a Liberal politician, and he introduced renewable energy zones primarily for securing the economic prosperity and competitiveness of New South Wales. They wanted to have the lowest prices, and that's what they thought they were doing. And now we have the regulator saying that consumers are now paying $500 million per year for the costs of the roadmap. And as a result of that, partly the result of that, New South Wales had the highest price increases of the states that were assessed in that document out of any state. The perfect inverse of what was promised is coming true in the regulatory documents. You all read that in the ABC, right? We all had that front page, you know, the $500,000 from the res zones. Crystal clear evidence from the regulator. Nobody's talking about this yet. And it was removed, by the way, from the final version. You have to go to the draft document to get the exact dollar figure here. So this has all been well known. Also, we have government bureaucrats and officials basically telling us that the current strategy is to push more and more costs onto taxpayers to conceal the cost in your bills, right? Okay. And because, and I quote, passing costs through to consumers isn't always a model that is achievable politically or sustainable. All right. So this is from Kirsty Gowans, head of electricity in the Department of Climate Change, Energy, and water, all right? So the most senior bureaucrat has said basically the minister's marching orders are to protect consumers from these costs that we know are coming for political purposes, okay? Again, the debate is absolutely over about whether we're building a higher cost system here. They're just trying to shuffle it into different accounts so it's not noticed. What about industry, all right? A brilliant set of anonymous questions were asked to a bunch of CEOs across the energy sector by the Australian Energy Council, and they produced a report, Delivering Australia's Energy Transition Affordably. All right, now you can guess what all the CEOs said when they were asked anonymously. They said things like this. Most urgent issue, I think, is affordability. The general public haven't really cottoned on to the fact there's a cost for the transition, and power bills will go up for a while before they go down. Now, that's saying they're still going to go down. Remember what happened in the UK. But there are a huge slew of more quotations than this. Basically, calm before the storm, all right? I think the storm is coming around cost and competitiveness. Or what about the deployment rates are locking in higher prices? Other ones here, people are already struggling to pay their power bills and are going to get slammed with more costs. This is all the CEOs These are the guys that own the energy companies, that have the generators, that have the retailers, that are sending you your power bills, saying you're going to get slammed with higher costs. All right? And yet still, there are politicians that have the temerity to stand against that and say, no, we're going to do it better, it'll push prices down soon. What also annoys me, and again, a couple of quotes here, bills will increase for at least the next decade. Damning, absolutely damning. And still, the CEO of that peak body, that energy peak body, has the temerity to write this. The AEC supports the transition to net zero emissions by 2050 on the premise that the least cost, lowest impact pathway is an energy system dominated by renewables. All right? So it seems like they're saying, we're doing this because it's least cost. Actually, all the evidence of all the CEOs said this is going to cost a bomb. This is the calm before the storm. People are going to be hit by this and absolutely slammed. And yet, this is what's being pushed. And you can imagine how this was spun by all the news reporting that said, CEOs back in net zero, all right? Okay, but yet, they've come and told us perfectly honestly, this is locking in far higher costs. So, extremely disappointing in terms of the industry peak body. I think they're misrepresenting the evidence that their CEOs have actually given. Now, there's a bunch of other papers that have been used to sort of support the counter-argument. I don't have time to go through all of them. I will touch on one headline conclusion and flaw in just one of them, which is the CSIRO's Gen Cost report. Okay, that's the one on the far left here. The final version was released in June last year. For June, there's done a draft in consultation, which I won't get to. But the CSIRO's report, it now says the integrated costs of renewables, those bands on top of the light blue there are the extra bits for firming, for storage, for transmission, etc. They stack up to around about $150 a megawatt hour, okay? $150 a megawatt hour is the CSIRO's estimate. I haven't tangled with anything yet. This is just what the CSIRO said in their final report, all right? Now, I could tangle with all the different parts of that graph, and I won't, but that's their words. Now, that $150 a megawatt hour is higher, wait for it, than the wholesale cost of electricity has really ever been delivered in any state up until recently, or the height of the peaks of the Ukraine war, okay? So basically, CSIRO is saying this is going to cost more. Have you heard the CSIRO come and explain that clearly? This has been absolutely absent, right? But I have not tangled with anything yet here in their assumptions, and they're still showing a price projection which will, or not a price projection, a system cost which is higher than any power that we've ever generated. Now, the one thing I'll tangle with, there's a band. $150, that's just a midpoint. There's actually a range. They estimate a range based on uncertainties. But the key to understanding that range, we'll unpack that $150, and whether we believe that midpoint, is to understand that it only comes down to one thing in renewable energy in their calculation. We probed CSIRO on this. They don't have an estimate for the higher and lower case for how much a solar panel costs. They don't have an upper bound or lower bound for how much transmission we need or how much battery storage needs. They are all fixed inputs. The only thing that determines the range is the assumed capacity factor of renewable energy, i.e. how much on average the sun shines, how much on average the wind blows, and how much energy you get out of that system compared to it being operating 100% of its peak output the whole time. That's the only thing. And that range there is defined as having wind and solar at 29% and 19% in their most pessimistic case. And anyone here who's been watching wind and solar know, well, that's probably about average, actually. It's just a touch below average. And their optimistic case, which sets the lower bound, is solar at 32% and wind at 48%. All right? 48% capacity factor wind. Where and how does that happen? Now, CSIRO actually tells us, if you flip through, you find all the pages, follow all the footnotes, they tell us exactly how they got there. All right? Oh, by the way, sorry, reference point. Here's the wind capacity factors in 2024, all right? So the 29% is sort of middle of the pack, and they go from the middle to above the highest achievers in the pack, all right? Absolutely insane, right? That's how skewed the CSIRO's selection is. But they tell us how they do it. They take their sample of a whole bunch of wind farms and producers across 5 or 10 years, and they take the best year of the best wind farm in their whole fleet and take the high point from that point. All right. So this is the best a single wind farm ever could do ever in history. All right. There is no chance, of course, the fleet will do any better than the average. All right. And that means that you end up with costs more like $176 a megawatt hour, which is way, way north of anything we've ever experienced. That would be much more like a reasonable estimate. And I haven't started on the battery estimates and transmission estimates, and I won't go there today. So I'd like to finish with telling you a story about a recent Victorian experience. I turned up to cross-examine a witness at the planning hearings for the Warwick Green Energy Park. And I don't do many of these, but I knew people in the area and wanted to ask and see what would happen. So this is Richard Bolt. Richard Bolt is a greybeard in the energy sector. All right, so he's currently chair of Hydro Tasmania. He's steeped in the Victorian public service. He's been heads of departments, things like that, involved in energy very, very deeply. You know he's a true expert because he was trying to get a $500 million hydrogen export project up. Won't comment more on that and how credible that makes it all seem. But anyway, so he is an expert in any sense, and he was paid by the proponent to give his expert independent opinion to support the panel. What he does not say is that this project will help push power prices down. He does not say that. That is not a claim he can make. In fact, he says the opposite. So, right, he says that, you know, all the system modelling out there, it says this is the best way to reach net zero, but that doesn't mean the system will be cheaper than not constraining emissions, and I make that clear in my submissions, right? He is admitting here, crystal clear, plain as day, his expert testimony to support a wind farm developer does not extend to saying this will push power prices down. In fact, the opposite. He's acknowledging this will have higher costs and goes on to make more statements, right? To sort of say, he says that, parts of the cost will be put onto taxpayers. We've heard this story as well already before from the head of electricity at Q, trying to push the costs around so they don't hit bills too much. And in fact, and I was questioned again and again and again, and he said, I think the transition to net zero through renewables will be more expensive in the medium term than not taking no action. I was basically told to shut up because I was badgering the guy because he was ducking and weaving, trying to avoid making statements like this. But we get to the point here where even the experts, steeped in the public service, all right, hired by proponents, won't say this is in the public interest because it'll push prices down or give us least cost energy. They're just saying we have to achieve the public policy outcomes of net zero anyway. And it's just the least cost way of doing that. We're pushing prices up, we know, but that's necessary to meet the government targets. The government targets are sacrosanct and they must be met. Now, why does this piss me off? Why does this get me really, really riled up? And that is because when you go back and look at the government targets and why they were put in place, they are actually all about helping to secure Victoria's economic prosperity and competitiveness, okay? And you can find this from Lily D'Ambrosio. You can find quotes left, right, and centre. Here's another one. Sorry, I think I've repeated that slide. This is Sheena Watt, again, similarly debating about the new targets. For example, renewable energy target teams will place downward pressure on Victoria's electricity bills by bringing forward low-cost renewable energy. Want someone else, all right? Ingrid Stitt, to grow the economy, putting downward pressure on prices. This is all written left, right, centre, absolutely everywhere. Hansard, the rationale for pushing these policies forward has been to push bills down. And there is absolutely no self-respecting way of arguing today that will happen. In fact, the experts are telling us the opposite. I'm sorry, this will probably push bills up, but that's okay because the politicians said this has to happen to meet net zero. That logic is absolutely, absolutely so circular, disappointing. And it's perpetuated incessantly from the highest levels, including Jacinta Allen here. She says we're fast-tracking renewables to drive down power bills because it's the cheapest form of energy, all right? How is it possible? How is it possible that these politicians continue to make this case that this is doing us a favour and pushing prices down when all the CEOs, all the experts, even those paid for by the companies that are building the wind farms, tell us the opposite? Even the CSIRO. This debate should not be happening. The debate is done. It's case closed. It's absolutely over. And yet somehow we're in a situation where this is politically salient and the Victorian government can get away with trying to peddle the opposite. So I have a message, a tacit message to the opposition, to simply say, every day that passes that you do not draw blood on this issue from the government peddling these lies and gaslighting Victorians and the entire nation about why you are pursuing these targets is a day that you deserve, quite frankly, to lose votes to another party that will draw blood on this topic.
Who would have thought, mate, a weather-dependent energy system is not consistent with a low-cost energy system?
I mean, well, they can't all be like scientists, can they?
Well,
And know simple things like that.
correct. Yeah, they are pretty stupid. No one country in the world has made renewable energy a low-cost energy system. No exceptions.
Now, in fact, I believe Germany are ditching it.
Beep,
Yeah.
beep,
And they're like, oh my God, why did we get rid of our nuclear?
Even the UK are switching nuclear back on. They understand that this is an issue. And then you got government officials and bureaucrats are saying that the current strategy is to push costs onto taxpayers to conceal the cost in your energy bills. Hide the true costs to protect their political reputations. It's disgusting, mate.
Pack of fucking dogs. mate.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Hide it
You
from-
guys should be ashamed of yourselves.
Hide the truth from the public.
Fuck.
Transparency?
Or what do you say? Transparency.
No.
Transparency.
Oh God, I hate him.
Did he fib?
I was telling fibs.
Yes.
I think so.
Fib.
Oh, who else was saying? Oh, they're just lying out like that bloody Jacinta Allen, saying, "Oh yeah, we're doing this to try to get the prices down lower." No, you're not.
They never say, this is where they're smart though. They don't ever say we're going to drop your power prices. We're going to put downward pressure on your power bills. What does that mean?
No, she actually said.
No, well, whatever she said, well, we don't really take much notice of what she says. But even the CEOs of the power companies, mate,
They know it's
they
not.
are saying people are going to get slammed by
Yep.
their energy bills. Come on, if they're saying it must be true.
Well, at least that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's actually a negative for them. It's like
Absolutely. But they don't care because we're going to pay
you're
it.
buying it anyway.
You got to pay it.
You're doing it anyway.
The CSIRO are saying that this is going to cost more, but that's only when the conditions are perfect at their absolute peak output, which is what has been used for their costings. It's actually going to cost more than what the CSIRO
So they took it from the best ever wind and wind,
Yeah.
the best ever wind. It would be 62%, and that was over how many years?
1 year.
It was a whole year, and this was the best day of that certain wind, and they made that the average. What the hell? How is that right?
Because they have to form an opinion that supports government ideology, mate.
I mean, I know this goes on, but like that is so blatant, man. It's like
It's a sham.
It's an
We're getting
absolute
scammed,
sham.
mate.
Yeah,
There's no doubt about it.
absolutely.
So even the experts hired by wind farm projects are saying that the policy outcomes are more important than cheaper energy.
Yep.
Ideology more important than the people.
Well, the thing is, that's a reality check, right? They do not feel the pain that ordinary people feel.
Yeah,
So, fuck them.
exactly.
Because we have to get this through.
Yeah.
Even though the rest of Europe are going,
Uh-oh.
nah.
We made a
nah,
mistake.
Let's do it backwards. It's like, come on. Waking up, you pack of arseholes.
In a nutshell, basically what they've said is, this isn't working.
Yeah.
But the government says, well, we're going to push on anyway. Stuff for people.
Just to remind us, Chris Bowen, with his stupid ideas. We're pushing on with hydrogen because no one else has done it. We want to be the leaders in it.
Just think, in 5 years' time, we could have the dearest form of energy that only works occasionally.
And everybody could be dirt poor.
That's exactly right. So the government talks about securing lowest cost of energy, but it isn't. It won't. It can't. It's a lie. And Aidan just proved that.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
It's proof that ideology is put ahead of the population, mate. We already knew that. It's ahead of cost of living. It's ahead of welfare. It's ahead of prosperity. It's ahead of small business. It's ahead of farmers. It's ahead of families. They are peddling lies to us.
just Can it get any worse?
It can't get any
Oh
worse,
my
mate.
God.
Why can't people wake up and see that this is a scam?
It's a travesty of justice, mate.
It
It's
is.
like, fuck, how long have they been in? It feels like they've never not been in.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like, especially the last year or so, it's just been getting
More.
rimmed
More.
and more.
2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
Out of control, mate.
It's shit.
Well, really, since COVID. It's all gone to shit since COVID, let's be honest.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's just tagged on and it keeps on a mountain up. It's like, what are our power bills going to, when are they going to be happy with, I mean, how high does our bills have to go?
Oh, evidently higher. Much higher. And as Aidan says, it hasn't started yet.
Yeah. It's only going to get much,
It's only going
much
to get a
worse.
lot worse.
Mate, I'm going to turn my electricity off.
Yeah, we need to go off grid.
Yeah. We could get like a little generator between your place and my place.
How are you getting the diesel to charge it? Power it?
Aye, true.
Yeah.
A big solar
A
panel.
big solar diesel, a big solar generator. All right, everyone, let us know what you think. I know that's a bit of a long one, but hey, Aidan's speech was amazing. And it proves to us, we're going to take him at his word because he knows what he's talking about, that this is a scam.
Absolute rot.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
See ya.